All right, everyone, I'm excited about today's episode. I have on Anais Goldberg, and a quote that she has that I love is "The road to wellness starts in your kitchen." So if you follow me, a lot of the people who listen here also follow me on social media. I'm always sharing meals and food. Food is what brings people together. My husband and I always say the kitchen table is what brings people together. So I love that the road to wellness starts in your kitchen, because I feel like that's just where the family hangs out, right? Around the snacks, around the fridge, around the food. And she's going to share with us. She's a mom, a home cook turned entrepreneur, and she's the creator of Cook Intuitively with Anais. So I'm really excited to hear from her today. She has so much to offer us about cooking healthy because we're all busy, how food affects our skin, how to raise our kids, learning about nutrition and food sources. And if you're listening or if you're raising daughters, you're definitely going to want to keep listening, because we're going to talk a little bit about that as well, since you all know I have my little girls. So I'm super excited to have her here. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Elizabeth.
I'm so glad you're here. So today, I live outside Chicago. I'm not sure where you're from. And we've had such mild weather. And then all of a sudden it turned to the 20s and we are freezing here. I cannot warm up. And so I drank a lot of coffee this morning. So I feel like why my words were a little bit jumbled in the introduction, because I'm like running on coffee because it's so cold here. I just got to stay warm.
Oh my gosh, that is cold. You do not want to know. I thought I was cold. It's in the low 70s. I'm in Los Angeles.
In the low 70s. Oh my gosh.
But I got to tell you, I love Chicago. It's one of my favorite cities in the world.
Oh, really?
I would live there even with the cold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the seasons are definitely fun, but there's also something to be said when it's warm and you can get some fresh air every day and go outside and spend a little bit more time in nature. We struggle with that here in the winter.
Yes, yeah, I'm sure. My cousin lives in Minneapolis, and I always say, "What a great city, Minneapolis." He's like, "Well, when come April and there's still 6 feet of snow on the ground, you kind of get sick of it."
Exactly. I love winter, but it's usually for me March. March, I love winter. Can't wait for it. But now, when March rolls around, March to May is really hard for me because it's not warm yet enough to do things. But you're in that back and forth. It's cold, then it's hot, and then those are my struggle months here. But I do love this season. So I'm super excited to chat with you. I'd love to talk about creating healthy meals for ourselves, because we all live such busy lives. But before we dive into that, I'd love to hear how you got started in this, and what's your story? What brought you to where you are, and to have your Cook Intuitively?
So many, it's like this intersection of all these different paths that brought me here. Um, I have a family, a very large family, and like you said at the beginning of the episode, everybody gathers in the kitchen at the table. So I grew up with memories of always gathering with my big Cuban or Mexican family. Mom's Cuban, dad's Mexican. My grandmothers practically raised me. They were both big influences in my life, and they both always were cooking for us. So that was a real heavy impression that I got growing up. And then I struggled with my weight, starting throughout adolescence and into high school and early adulthood. And I also worked very hard. I worked full time and went to school at night. So when I finally decided that I was going to commit to a diet that I wanted to do, it was actually the South Beach diet. And I bought the book and I read it and I looked at the meal plans and I saw that I had no time at all to do any of those meals because I was going to school Monday through Friday, leaving the house at 6:30 in the morning, not coming home until 10:30 at night. So I was like, well, the only way I'm going to be able to eat any of this food is if I make it all ahead of time on Sunday. So that's when I taught myself how to meal prep, and I succeeded. I lost the weight. It did not come back. it was just my new lifestyle that I was always going to cook for myself. And I was always going to, focus on my health first and foremost, and not yo-yo diet like I did throughout high school and honestly, like I had seen many women in my family do throughout my life. Um, and then I had my children, and it was not the top priority to get back to like my leanest self, but it was something that I wanted to do, and I was really struggling with getting back to looking the way I did in my early 30s. So one day I was listening to a podcast, Goop, actually, and I heard Dr. Gundry on there talking about his book, The Plant Paradox. And he was talking about inflammatory autoimmune conditions. And he kept talking about Crohn's disease. And I said, oh, you know what? I should send this to my family member who has Crohn's disease. So I sent her the podcast, and also her husband, who's a doctor. So I felt like he would know a little bit. And he retorted, why don't you do this for your thyroid disease? And I was like, oh, I had never thought of my thyroid disorder, hypothyroidism, as an autoimmune disorder. So I said, okay, yeah, let me try it. Let's see what, I just saw it as a physical challenge that maybe I'll fix my thyroid. So I dove headfirst into the plant paradox diet, and it's the philosophy of it is that you eliminate foods that are inflammatory, commercial seeds, oils, sugars, grains, a lot of cow's dairy, and then all of a sudden, some really wonderful things started happening to me. Like I stopped having breakouts on my back and my shoulders, which I constantly did. I stopped feeling achy in my joints and hips, which I always attributed to, being on the floor with my little ones, or like, I had 3 little girls under the age of 3. So there was a lot of things that I kind of just wrote off that were because I was a mom with young children. My hair stopped falling out. My eyes looked better. My skin looked better. And all that weight, those stubborn, like 8 pounds that I still wanted to lose, but wasn't really that focused on, they came off. I realized that I had been dealing with a lot of symptoms of inflammation and autoimmune disease for a really long time. And it was because I thought I was healthy, but I was still eating really highly inflammatory foods. And then this last step of how I went to the business is during the pandemic, like I said, grew up in a culture of cooking, and I always cooked for myself. And then when I started this anti-inflammatory lifestyle, I continued to cook for myself, but with those principles in mind. And then during the pandemic, when I had no children to drive to preschool or take to ballet lessons, and I had always been encouraged by my friends to teach cooking, I was like, let me just get on Instagram stories and start showing my friends what I'm making for dinner and give them little tips. And then people started telling me that they really were enjoying my cooking show. They kept calling it my cooking show. I'm like, it's just Instagram stories, guys. It's not a cooking show. But it was something that gave me purpose, and I would do it every day. And I got such, great feedback from people that it felt good. And then that turned into a cooking course. And anyway, it brought me to where we are now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so amazing. A couple things that you said that, like, I guess triggered for me was when you're talking about how your grandma's kind of raised you in the kitchen and cooking. How do you blend your culture and food? Because I find that that's like where I have some problems, like not necessarily that. I mean, when I cook for myself in my home, everything's fine. But like, my husband's nonna and nonna are from Italy, and there's still a lot in the culture that uses like vegetable oil for things. And like, we know that seed oils are really inflammatory and they're really not good for you. So when we like jarred eggplant, I used olive oil in all of mine, but other people use canola or vegetable. And I'd prefer my kids like not to eat foods saturated in that. So it's like, how do you approach like, I get it if it's every once in a while we go to Nona's, whatever, but like we're with family a lot. So it's like, where do you combine the two, or did you like talk with your family about certain things? Or is it just like when we go to their house, whatever, I'm not worried about it, or I'll just bring my own?
I try not to sweat it with my girls because, my mom gives them quite a bit of sugar. They know when they go to grandma's house, they're going to get into the pantry with marshmallows and chocolates. And she's got, oh, I've got this for you and whatever. I just try to not sweat it with my girls. For myself, I always offer to bring a dish. And that ensures that I always, that there's always something that I can eat there. But I don't put too much of my food stuff on my family because I know it's an uphill battle for, and my brothers get highly triggered by my substitutions that I do. For example, I'm hosting Thanksgiving for the first time this year. And my brother is very concerned about whether there will be mashed potatoes or not. And so things like that, you're not going to give us some kind of weird stuff. And I'm like, everything I make is delicious. Have you ever tried anything that I made that you didn't like? So why are you trying to impose your, horrible eating habits, doctor, on me?
Right.
He is a doctor, and and he drinks gigantic Cokes during his shift, but whatever.
Yeah. It's so funny because a while ago, my husband's grandma said something to her that the doctor said, I don't remember what it was, and they eat a lot of pasta. And I think they usually use like olive oil on the pasta, or they'll put butter on the bread. And she was like, oh, I got to cut down on the olive oil and butter. And my husband's like, maybe on the pasta and bread. Like maybe that's the issue. Like not the olive oil and butter.
It's so maddening. I'm actually very lucky in that on my mom's side of the family, the Cuban side, my aunt has actually really educated herself on. She's kind of become the matriarch since my grandmother passed away, and she's very into health and wellness. So I don't have to worry too much with my that side of the family, and the women on in my family really dig what I'm doing. I'm very grateful for. And a lot of times I go into their house and I see all these things that I've recommended. I'm like, oh, thanks. But it's the men that I have trouble with. My dad recently had a major heart attack, and just trying to tell him, Daddy, you can't keep having coffee cake for breakfast anymore. And he thinks, and the doctor told him to cut down on red meat. I'm like, oh God, Daddy, no, it's not the red meat. It's the cookies and the cakes and his sweet tooth is
processed stuff.
The processed, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, I deal with it on my side too. But the nice thing is my sister's super health conscious, so she's already like paved the way a lot. So it's like easier for me to set boundaries and do certain things. And I'm not like, for people listening, I'm not like crazy about it. Like my 2-year-old has had cookies and ice cream and whatever else, it's not like I'm hardcore, but I am like health conscious, and it can be tough, like having those conversations. And then especially when it comes around culture and food, because there's recipes that you want to incorporate with your family, that you want to pass down, that you want to continue the traditions. So, but you can make some healthy substitutions. So I love the information that you shared.
I love, my grandmother's empanadas were one of my favorite foods growing up. And I was so excited when I found a really healthy substitution for the dough. it was so simple, made them way easier, and they taste exactly the same. I get the same memory. And all I did was substitute like what my grandmother would make with, her masa of the flour and oil and whatever else. I wish I could remember exactly how she made it, but I don't suppose I would actually make it. But Capello's lasagna strips,
Mm-hmm.
the Capello's pasta,
Mm-hmm.
had it. It's an almond flour based pasta. They sell it at Whole Foods, but it's in the refrigerated section, or the freezer section. And those lasagna strips, I fold them and cut them and put the empanada filling in it, and it is exactly like my grandmother's empanadas growing up. So I've modified quite a few of our traditional Cuban recipes and some Mexican stuff, so that I still get that,
Mm-hmm.
that comfort.
Yeah. 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 That's good. You got me craving empanadas now. Sounds so good. All right. So let's talk about like healthy meals for yourself when having a busy week. Cause you were talking about how you learned how to food prep. And I feel like that's always something that I tell myself I'm going to do, but then I struggle because I'll start like the other night I was making food and my 8-month-old is on a napping hiatus right now. And so I like start chopping the carrots and then she's fussing and I have to get her something. Then I come back and every time like I'm in and out, like in the middle of trying to get something done, I'm just like, okay, where was I? Where did I leave off? And like, what could have taken me half an hour took me 2 hours. And then the kitchen's a disaster because I can't like clean while I go. And then it's just like, oh my gosh, like, but I made like a giant batch of stuff because I'm like, okay, then I'm starting since it's getting 20 degrees here. I'm like, okay, if I make soup, I'm going to make a double batch, freeze half. And then that's something that can help. But like food prepping for the week, I feel like is tough.
Yeah, you have to really be so disciplined, but you got to keep in mind when you're doing it and you're like gearing yourself up for it, like my week is going to be so much easier. If I take this hour and a half or 2 hours, probably start to finish once you clean up and everything, make all this food, I'll be done for the week. And I won't have to go in to the kitchen. Well, kind of, but like you will free up so much time in your week. Save a lot of money. It's not everybody eats out so often, but if somebody goes to work in the office, you save so much money meal prepping, bringing your own food. It's just a mental thing you got to get through. But yeah, the distractions. Your 8-month-old. Can I give you a quick tip? This is something I would do all the time. Wear her while you're cooking.
Mm-hmm.
On your back, of course, because you don't want, especially if you're making something hot.
I know. That's what my husband was saying yesterday when I was doing the soup. He was like, just because he could hear her in the background. I'm like, I gotta go. I'll call you back. He's like, wear her. But I haven't worn her on my back yet. And I need to figure out how to do that. Because I was in the process, I had a couple of friends who had babies, so I was bringing them some of the soup. So I was filling up jars with hot soup. So I'm like, I don't want to wear her in the front because I'm like working with hot soup here. Like I can't, I can't. But yes, the back. I do need to do
Put
the
her
back.
on your back.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is a good tip. I do need to wear her.
I know, but yes, it is hard to stay focused. Some little mental game I play with myself is because I really do well with like challenges. So I set an Alexa timer for 15 minutes. I'm like, okay, if I can accomplish this task of cleaning up all the dishes that are around the kitchen and everything within 5 minutes, I'll feel before the timer goes off, I'll feel super accomplished because I easily get distracted in the kitchen as well too. So I will start making one thing and then be like, oh no, I wanted to go make this thing, and I do that same exact thing. So I have to like set an Alexa timer. How stupid is that? But it works for me. It keeps me focused on accomplishing this one task. Let me see if I can beat the clock to finish making this salad dressing for the week, finish making this, assembling whatever it is I was. So those little mind tricks work for me to keep you focused.
So then I'm assuming then you know what you're going to be making for dinner each night,
More
already.
or less. So sometimes I do,
Yeah.
sometimes I
So then
don't.
is it just kind of like chopping the veggies, cooking, prepping the meat, like cooking it or whatever, so then you can just throw everything together?
Yes. Well, sometimes it's just a matter of like forethought of defrosting something, or, most of my prep nowadays involves just buying the stuff, going to the farmer's market and making sure that all I feel like just organizing the food from the farmer's market takes me the entire Sunday sometimes. Um, and then making sure that things are defrosted because I keep my freezer. I buy all my meats from
Butcher box?
grassroots farmers. No,
Oh,
I have a couple of different sources. Grassroots farmers co-op for like chicken and
mm-hmm.
meats, and anyway, everything comes delivery and frozen. So I have to make sure that things are going to go get into the refrigerator so they'll be defrosted in time. So I just plan a little bit like that. And since I do a lot of the stuff on Instagram, I have to kind of be a little more organized than if it was just me. But I'm lucky in that like my girls, well, there's a few things that I know my girls will eat, and I will have a successful dinner. Salmon, they eat great. Lamb, they eat great. Steaks, these girls love Wagyu, New Zealand from
They're
Australia.
bougie, huh?
They are. They love their Wagyu ribeye. Um,
So funny. I'll take a Wagyu, please.
yeah. So, and with vegetables, I just keep it easy. I try to not do vegetables that involve a lot of chopping. Like broccoli, you could just break it apart and kind of just roast it. Same with cauliflower and things like that.
Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. My girls also love steak. My 2-year-old loves steak. And we realized recently when we make steak for us, like now it's not enough. We have to make more.
Yeah, I know.
Starting to make more.
Yeah.
Um, so I was thinking the other day and I'm like, I need to make a social media post about this because I find it amusing. Like being a parent is like cooking for your kids. And one day, like, because this is what happens to me all the time. I make 2 eggs in the morning for me because neither of the girls have been liking eggs that day or lately. So I make 2 eggs for myself. That day they eat all my eggs. So then I have to make more. So then the next day I make 4 eggs. Then nobody eats them except for, you know what I mean? Like it's like, wait,
100%. I know exactly what you mean. Exactly.
yeah,
It's
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 like,
it's one
okay.
of the biggest frustrations as a parent. Or like one day I'll make something and to my surprise, everybody loves it. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, great. When I pull this out as leftovers in 2 days, it should be cool. No, no one wants it again.
Right,
No.
right.
I'm like, you liked that 2 days ago. I don't want it anymore. Oh my gosh. Okay. All
Hmm. Hmm.
right.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Luckily, me and my husband both love leftovers, so we'll eat whatever. But then, yeah, I'm like, oh, I'll make a big, like, they've both been eating carrots lately. I made the soup with carrots in it. The last 2 days, neither of them will eat the carrots. I'm like, what is happening? Like, what happened? You've
That's
both
gonna
been eating
happen
carrots.
forever. It's gonna happen forever. I'm so sorry to tell you that.
Just my life now.
I
Um,
know.
well, before we get into like cooking, like with kids and conscious eating, uh, I'd love to talk about how to eat for radiant and youthful skin because I mean, you kind of touched on it earlier that you were having breakouts and then you changed your diet and that helped a lot. Um, I know that some foods, I'm actually still going through it. I know I have some histamine issues. So when I eat certain things, I get like super red on my face. I'll have some like breakouts. And the weird thing is, lately, I feel like it's avocado that does it to me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like I don't feel great when I eat avocado and I don't eat a ton of it, but if I eat like half an avocado, I get super flushed and it's the weirdest thing.
I have heard of avocado having that effect on some people. Kind of like
Yeah.
the same effect of like when you like eat like a pineapple and it gets on your skin a little bit? Is it like that? It's like a little itchiness or?
No, I don't feel it at all. I don't really
Oh.
feel it, but my cheeks will turn bright red. I get like kind of almost break out a little bit. And then I just don't feel great. Like when I eat too much fat, like even if it's healthy, like I couldn't sit down and eat eggs, bacon, and avocado all in one meal. That would be like too much fat for me. So it could be like a gallbladder thing. I don't know, but like I just too much fat for me. Then I just immediately want to take a nap. I don't like get sick, but I'm like, ugh, like I'm tired. I'm groggy.
Yeah.
It's not life-giving to me. So yeah, I just can't combine all those foods together, but I am trying to figure out where some of my underlying skin issues come from, because I have had sensitivities in the past. I've changed things around, had a couple of kids. So now I'm back on like, okay, so what's working for me, what's not?
Yeah, well, it seems like avocado definitely is not working for you.
I don't
Although
think
I
so.
would tell most people avocado great for the skin.
Oh,
But
man.
I think more important than what what you are putting it into your body is so important, but it's also very important for your skin what you're not putting into your body. So grains will wreak havoc on your skin. They will age you quickly. I'm talking about uh, oats, um, wheat, barley, things like that. Just I stay away from grains, with the exception of every now and then I'll do a really good piece of sourdough bread if I'm at some place where it's worth it. Yes, you do things in light moderation, but grains are not a part of my everyday diet. Um, avocado, avocado. I can't get that out of my head now. Extra virgin olive oil, I use a lot of it when I'm cooking. That's my preferred fat. And lots of dark leafy greens. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of dark leafy greens sauteed in olive oil are delicious. I do a lot of broccoli sprouts, onion sprouts, just really high, nutrient dense vegetables that are high in polyphenols. Of course, I do a lot of supplementation with berberine, CoQ10, things that really help your mitochondria function. And those are all going to have really great effects on your skin.
Interesting. What was the one you said before, CoQ10?
CoQ10, yep.
No, right before that. What did you say?
Oh, berberine. Berberine.
I do not know what that is.
Very powerful antioxidant.
I've never heard of that before. Also for people listening, so like if you've recently made some diet changes and then your skin's kind of breaking out, like that can almost happen too, because when we detoxify or make some changes, it comes from the inside out. So even if somebody doesn't have great skin and then they make some food changes, it could get worse before it gets better. And I think that's hard, because then people are like, why am I even eating healthy? This is doing nothing for me. But it's like, well, if you think about it, like it's coming out.
Right. Yep. Oh, and you got to stay away from the cow's milk and the cow's dairy. That's
I
a
love
tough
cheese
one for
too much.
people. I love cheese too, but I do a lot of goat cheese, sheep's cheese, and cow's cheese from France, from Spain, from Italy is okay. But the cow's cheese that is raised here in the United States, gosh, there's so little regulation on agriculture here. And unfortunately, those cows are fed a very poor diet.
Yeah.
And then you're consuming their byproduct of their poor diet. So you are what you eat,
Yeah, well, that's something that I've recently made. Well, I've started this like a while ago, but made some changes in is I found this awesome farm here. So I actually just recently got raw milk from them for the first time and did that. And then a store here, and even Trader Joe's has a raw cheddar. So you can find some raw cheese, and depending on like the farm and whatever, So my girls love raw cheese. So I do a lot of goat cheese, raw cheese, and then recently just got the raw milk. So the raw milk was great. We loved it. My daughter loved it.
Yeah, I don't buy raw milk personally, but people seem to tolerate it much better than they would
right, right. Right. And I've said
pasteurized.
before, I want to do like a whole episode on it and bring somebody on to talk about it. Cause I know some people listening are like, what, raw milk? No way, blah, blah, blah. But it's also very highly tested. Like even the place that I go, like they highly test it. They take down all your information so that if anything is found wrong with it or anything, like they immediately contact you. And it's not as crazy as people think it is. So,
Oh, I know. Absolutely not. I have a girlfriend who's very much into the raw milk, and she swears up and down that it won't even go bad.
no, I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I don't
That's
agree
what
with
she
that.
said.
No, I wouldn't say that. But I mean, I don't know what her experience is. For me, I feel like it definitely like we don't go through a lot of milk. So I bought like a half gallon and it lasts over a week. And by around that to like once it's opened, around that time, it's like, okay, we need to finish this up because it's going to start to get funky.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we don't use it a lot, but I do tolerate it way different. So for me, dairy was one of my allergens before. But when I do goat cheese, and raw milk, I really don't feel affected by it. Like it used to be if I drank a glass of milk, I'd either get a migraine or feel like I was going to poop my pants. So with the raw milk, I still am not a huge milk person. Like I'll put a little bit in my coffee or use it here or there, but I normally don't just like pour a glass and really drink it. But I'll have like a little bit more with this and I seem super unaffected by it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You're between you and my friend, you're going to get me into the raw milk thing, even though I just don't have it as habit, but I'm going to find some way to have some raw milk.
Yeah. 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 I mean, mine's more, yeah, here and there cooking
Yeah.
this or that. I did actually the other night, I poured a glass. I warmed it. I had some warm milk and honey before bed. It just sounded really good. I wanted something a little sweet. And I'm like, oh, that just sounds cozy. And I heated it up on the stove, added a little bit of, because I also got some local honey from the same farm. And it was like just so cozy and good. And I
That
didn't
does sound
feel
like just such a
sick.
treat.
Yeah. And we're gonna start making hot chocolate here soon. So I'm sure we'll use it in that. But yeah, definitely different types of dairy. People don't realize that the processing of it changes it and it's not as bioavailable and it changes the way that we digest it and our system accepts it or not. I've heard crazy statistics that like a huge amount of the population is lactose intolerant or has some sort of aversion to it that they might not even know of.
Yep.
It's wild. Okay, so let's talk about kids. Because my 2-year-old, I guess I haven't really talked with her that much about like nutrient profiles of food or anything like that. But we've been really trying to not use food as reward and not make things like the other night she asked for chocolate chips or whatever. So I just put them on her plate with her food instead of making it like this thing that she had to eat everything on her plate, then have chocolate chips or whatever. Like not trying to make it a huge deal when they do have some sugar or whatever. But I'd love for her to learn about the nutrient profiles of food and stuff. Like I remember my nephew who's now 14, when he was like 2 or 3, my sister, the one who was like self-conscious that paved the way, he was munching on a celery stick and I'm like, what are you eating there? He's like, celery. It's good for my digestion. I was like, oh, okay.
I love that.
It was so cute, but he would like,
so cute.
He like was always knowledgeable about it. And I'm like, man, how did she do that? So how do we raise our kids to be conscious of the nutrition and food sources that they're getting?
First of all, leading by example, I think is the strongest thing. So my girls see that I never have a piece of cake, that I don't partake in, that I'm not snacking, that I don't, I pass up certain things. And I never tell them that it's about weight. Never, ever, I hope, and because I'm very conscious about this, have my girls heard me say anything that I'm doing has anything to do with the way I look or my size or anything, and I don't talk about other people's sizes. So I say, my body doesn't feel good when I have pasta. They're like, why aren't you having any pasta? Because I do make pasta for my kids every now and then. You got to give them a win. And why aren't you having any pasta? It's just not what I eat. That doesn't make my body feel good. It makes my body hurt. And then when they have a plate of food, I try to make them aware of the nutritional profile of what's on their plate. Where's your fiber? Where's your protein? Where's your fat? Because kids, of course, if you let them dictate what they're going to eat, they're going to just fill themselves with a bunch of empty carbohydrates. So my girls had French toast this morning for breakfast, but I also made them crispy prosciutto, and I whipped up some whipped cream so that they could have some fat. And they said one of them only wants to have the French toast doused in maple syrup. I said, I can't send you off to school like that. That's not how you start your day. This is just a bunch of carbohydrates, and your brain is not going to function like this in a little bit. So you need to have some fat and some protein. Some fiber would be nice too. Can I get you to have some walnuts? Okay, fine, here. So then she'll have a piece of prosciutto at least, or put some whipped cream on top of her French toast. So it's just about making them aware of how certain foods make them feel. That's what I try to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to show them that, the night before when we had steaks for dinner and they all probably had 4 ounces each of ribeye, the next morning, everybody was happy. Nobody was fighting by 6 a.m. because sometimes my kids get a little cranky in the morning. And I find that happens the most when the night before all they had was pasta. When they had a really good satiating dinner the night before and they had the right amount of protein for them and some fiber and vegetables, the next morning we start off on a better foot because I think they feel better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just trying to bring awareness to how the different foods are having an effect on them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Again, the cultural piece comes in here because Europeans and Italians like to have cookies with coffee and dip it in the morning. So my husband's actually been on like a health kick lately. But sometimes he'll like have cookies with coffee, and it's like, you can't expect Jovi to not want cookies for breakfast when you're eating cookies for breakfast. But she likes cookies with coffee. So whenever he'd have it, he'd like let her dunk one in and take a bite. But it is interesting. And I love that you talked about like your wording around it, like that it's not about weight or it's not about looks, it's about how you feel. Because sometimes if you are like, you want a piece of cake because it tastes good and you're like, wow, this cake's really good, I want to have some. Great. But we also have the reverse true there. Like, how many times have we had people in our family eating cake and be like, oh, I shouldn't be eating this. Oh, I'm going to have to, like, I got to go work out now. Oh, like, I can't, just the negative around it. So it's like, if you are going to,
the food guilt, if you're going to do it and move on. And that's it. Right. I don't want my girls hearing me say, oh my gosh, my jeans don't fit because I had, no.
Right.
Because that's when we start to get into the body issues.
Right. Which I want to talk about too, because I remember, I guess like the first memory that I have where I felt really self-conscious of my body, I was 8 years old and I was a string bean. Like, I was super, super scrawny and I was super self-conscious of my body, though in the reverse. Like, I always thought I was bigger. And then when I hit puberty and I did begin to develop, that's when I really started having issues. And that's just something that I'm super conscious of now, having daughters, is like, okay, nobody taught me to be that way. Like, I grew up in a very loving family. I don't remember anybody ever commenting on my body negatively. I'm sure I heard people around me commenting about how they needed to lose weight. And I'm just like, how do I raise my daughters to maybe not have the same struggles I did? I'm not going to say they're not going to have any body image issues just because of the world and climate that we live in, but like, how do I do my best raising them to have a healthy body image?
I think the most important thing is leading by example.
Mm-hmm.
So if they see that you are feeling good about your body and that you're not focused on body image, yeah, there'll be some challenges, of course, but I think the example that we lead as mothers is the most important. I grew up watching my mom yo-yo diet, and then by the time I was 14, I started yo-yo dieting. So, and it was never about, the diets were never about health in my household. It was always strictly about fitting into that dress, looking good for that wedding, always about looks. And something I say often in my house, and I don't have to say it actually too often anymore, but when kids start to figure things out at some point, and they start to notice that people's bodies are shaped differently, and then they hear the word fat, and it's inevitable. So the first time I ever heard my daughter say something about a friend of hers who was heavier, I say, yeah, you're noticing that the shape of her body is different, because it was very innocent the first time she ever did it, probably still in preschool. You're noticing the shape of her body is different. It's a little bigger. That's okay. And we stay neutral about it. I'm just letting you know, we don't comment on the shape of people's bodies. And that's just our mantra in our house. We don't comment on the shape of people's bodies. And I knew I had made an impact when they spent the night at my parents' house. And my dad made some, off-color joke about my mom's butt being big. And they said, Bobby, we don't comment on the shape of people's bodies. Well done.
So win.
So I think that's important. And I also really am conscientious of not complimenting other women on their bodies in front of my daughters. And you know what? It's not appropriate to do it anyway. You can say you look great, you look radiant, you look so skinny. That's not okay to do. And it's really not okay to do in front of your girls.
Mm-hmm.
Because then they're, even though you think you're giving somebody a compliment, you're wreaking havoc on the whole mentality of body image. Every time they hear you say, oh my gosh, you look so good, you got so skinny.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I just say we don't comment on the shape of people's bodies. Big, small, thin, fat, it's not our business.
Right. I love that. Because I mean, when you were saying that, like, I have this memory burned in my mind. Like, there was a time in my life when I was super unhealthy and I was going through a lot, and I was at a weight that's not normally attainable for myself. Like, if I were to try to weigh that now, I would not be a happy person. I'd be miserable because I wouldn't be eating very much. And I just remember people telling me, like, oh my gosh, you look great. Like, you like commenting on the skinniness. I like that you look great. I think you look great, but people being like, oh my gosh, you've lost weight. You look amazing. And then that almost reiterating, like, oh, I have to continue to kill myself in order to maintain this weight. I have to continue to not eat and to work out hours upon hours a day and to not enjoy my life. Because these people are reiterating, I look better now than I did when I was nourishing myself. Like, so that was really hard for me to hear that. I like felt good. I'm like, yes, like it's working, but then also like, wait, like I have to maintain this lifestyle for people's approval.
Yeah. oh my gosh, you're so skinny. What are you doing? I'm
Right.
starving myself to death.
Right. Right.
You
Exactly.
want to
Yeah. It was
try?
more like that. Like, oh my gosh, you look so skinny. And then, yeah, just not good. So I love that. I think that, yeah, that's not a compliment. I think like, hey, you look great, that is fine. But like the skinny thing is not healthy at all.
Yeah, it's tricky with girls because my 6-year-old doesn't want to wear a warm jacket because she says it makes her look fat.
Hmm.
And I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? And somebody at school told her that when she came to school with a uniform jacket, that she looked fat. And I was like, it's such an uphill battle because there's so many, we're not operating in a silo here. I could do so much. I do my best inside my house, but then you can't help the kid that tells your daughter that she looks fat just from keeping warm. So I'm like, well, that was kind of silly. I'm like, dude, look at this puffy jacket I'm wearing right now. Do you think I look fat? No. I'm not fat underneath here. Right. And then it's like, oh, now I'm talking about body size.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Enough to make somebody crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do think though, like I mean, becoming a parent makes you watch everything that comes out of your mouth.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because my 2-year-old's a parrot now. And
Yep.
she's listening. Like she is listening when we're talking, and even like she's listening when we're talking about her. If I'm like, oh my gosh, Jovi did this today, or I'm telling my husband about it. And it's like, we have to be mindful of that too. Like how
Yeah.
we're speaking of her. If I'm like, dude, she was on another level today, like
it's crazy. It almost for parents who are very mindful, like obviously you are. I feel like I'm very mindful. It can be a little paralyzing. You really need to get your adult time in because I will not talk to my friends on the phone in front of my kids because like if my kids are in the car, I will not make a phone call because I don't know what's going to come out of that person's mouth.
yeah, that's true.
My kids are going to hear, and I'm not going to speak freely. I'm not going to engage in gossip in front of my children. I don't want to model that for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, we're gonna listen to Kids Bop.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Thank God we only have 3 minutes until we're home.
Oh gosh. Yeah. In my car, it's Old MacDonald and Twinkle Twinkle.
Oh, wait till you get to the Kids Bop age.
Oh, can't wait. Remember before kids when it's like my kids will just listen to whatever I listen to. And then you're like, oh, yep, we're putting on
I
Old
don't
MacDonald.
Yeah, I know.
That's better than you screaming. So yeah, Old MacDonald's fine.
I'll listen to Old MacDonald for the 20th time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. She's like a DJ in the back seat, like halfway through the song, Twinkle Twinkle. Then like 10 seconds into that one, Itsy Bitsy Spiber. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I totally remember that. What's crazy is when you turn on the car, you drop her off at preschool, you turn on the car, and you're halfway home and you realize you've been listening to it. So
You're like, I'm still listening to, oh my God, great. Kids Bop all the way home. Yeah, for sure. Well, before we wrap up, I'd love for you to tell people where can they find your Cook Intuitively at, and then also you have a supplement line, correct?
yes, I do. Yep. I've got a supplement line. It's Biologic Youth, biologicyouth.com. But really the best way to find out everything about me and see me and, take advantage of all the fun stuff is Instagram, Anais Goldberg.
Awesome. And I'll have that in the show notes. Whatever photo they sent me of you is you stuffing a fish with some deliciousness. I don't know what you're making here, but I want that recipe.
It's somewhere down in the, so I have so many posts, but yeah, that we did that on in one of my cooking courses. I think that's Branzino right there. It's very
Branzino.
good. Mm-hmm.
It looks so good. I actually like the whole fish.
It's so delicious. It's so much more delicious to make a whole fish than to make a fillet, even though fillet is really good. But it's very similar to like when you um, eat chicken on the bone is so much yummier than having boneless, skinless chicken breasts. Same thing with the fish. And it's actually very easy to make. I'll tell you right now.
Mm-hmm.
Preheat your oven to 420, 400, 425, whatever you want. Stuff it with herbs, season it with salt and pepper all over. Put some butter on top of it. Throw some olive oil in there too, and put it in the oven for like 10 minutes.
That's it?
That's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to try that.
Give it a try.
Yeah. Yeah. The first time I remember I had a whole fish, I was in Thailand, and I was like, what? How am I supposed to eat this? But it's like so normal basically in every other country.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. So
Except for
yummy
here.
too.
And it is better. Like you said, like I've been huge lately. I used to make chicken breasts all the time, and now I make chicken legs, chicken quarters, a whole chicken, drumsticks. Like I love chicken on the bone, and then I use all the bones to make bone broth. So it's like a double whammy for me. I just collect all the bones. But it's so much juicier. It's so much better.
So much better.
And it's never dry. Whenever I do chicken on the bone, it's never dry. When I do lately, I used to make such good juicy chicken breasts, and lately I don't know what I'm doing. It's just like it just randomly is dry, and I'm like, ugh, this isn't good. Like I like the chicken on the bone.
Same here. Down with the chicken breasts.
Yes. Yes, for sure. Unless I made the soup yesterday, things like that, whatever. But yeah, I definitely gonna have to try the whole fish recipe. Get my family on that. I wonder how my daughter will see it, since she's been super into Finding Nemo lately. So
really? That's another thing. I try to make my kids conscious of the fact that, we think before we eat, we thank the farmers that grew the food, the animals that died so that we could eat. So they are very conscious of the fact that we are eating animals. And I think that is a positive thing rather than, because it makes them aware of their food sources. My twins recently went to this place called the Gentle Barn for a field trip, and I was really worried that they were going to do some, vegan, vegetarian indoctrination there, because they asked for us to send a vegan lunch. I was like, oh God, here we come, and it's like a farm sanctuary. It's like for animals that have been mistreated in commercial as commercial livestock. So I was like, oh gosh, they're going to tell the kids to be vegan. So I was like, girls, before you go on this field trip tomorrow, I want you to know we get our food, our meats, our fish, our chicken from places where they treat the animals well. We don't get our food from farms that the farmers are abusing the animals. I just want you to know that. So if anybody tells you, but turns out they did not try to do any vegan indoctrination, and if you're a vegan, that's wonderful and fine, and that's your plan, that's great. Just not our plan here. But I do like to make them aware of their food sources, and
I think that's super important. My husband's actually going hunting this year for the first time, and I'm hoping I'd like to get back into fishing. I did it as a little girl, and I'm like, I would love to catch and clean our own fish. I'd love to, I hope he gets a deer this year. But I totally agree with all of that. And for people listening, they know I'm a huge Friends fan, but I always think of the episode in Friends. Did you ever watch that show?
Yeah.
Where Phoebe goes to sing to kindergartners, and like the parents are complaining that she's not singing about kid stuff. So they're like, can you sing about farm animals? And she's like, sure. The cow in the meadow goes moo. The cow in the meadow goes moo. Then the farmer hits them over the head with the hammer, and that's how we get hamburgers. And I'm like, kids need to know these things. Like, I think that it is really important for your kids to know where their food comes from, because there is such a disassociation, like that you see a cow and then you're eating a hamburger. And I do think that it does help you make more conscious decisions when choosing your meat, because commercial farming, factory farms are not only bad for the environment, they're also horrible for the animals. And like you were saying earlier, when you're eating animals that are fed antibiotics, that are not fed their natural diet, that aren't treated well, that are sick, that's coming across in the nutrient profiles of your food as well. So it really is from the top down. And I do think that it is important for your kids to know that. So, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see her reaction to a whole fish on her plate, but it will be a learning lesson.
It will be.
Well, with
It's an opportunity.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, teaching them from a young age. I remember going fishing. I could not put my own worm on my hook, and my uncle wouldn't do it for me. So my cousin had to put it on for me because I was like, no way, I cannot kill a worm. I would cry when I saw roadkill. I was a vegetarian in high school, like, because I grew up down the street from a feedlot. So I'd pass like a semi hauling cows and I would just bawl my eyes out. So I love animals. I feel like I've always felt super connected to nature and the earth. And I do think it does make a difference when you are honoring that animal. And when you also learn to eat like nose to tail style and using organ meats and stuff like that as well is helpful. So these animals aren't just slaughtered for beef, right?
Exactly.
It's everything in there. It's funny because other cultures, again, like do that. And here it's like, wait, cow tongue? That's disgusting. And it's like, no, it's actually not.
It's not. It's delicious.
Yeah, I saw it the other day at the store. I've never made it myself. I've had cow tongue tacos, but I'm like, maybe I should try to make some lingua.
I have some in my freezer right now. And I've been a little bit intimidated to make it. And also a little bit like, oh, I got to make this for the right people. Because I know my kids, my family is just going to, actually one of my kids would probably go for it. But my husband's going to be like, he's not super adventurous.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is adventurous. I grew up on it, but anyway.
Right. Totally. Well, thank you everybody for listening. I'll have where you can connect with her in the show notes. And yeah, then you can check out her cooking show on Instagram.
This is so fun, Elizabeth.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.